You're watching the DSP Leaders Summit on Open RAN, which looks at the rapid emergence and increasing importance of open radio access network technologies. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV. We have a two-part panel discussion today that looks at the economics of Open RAN from planning through to operation. The earlier panel focused on the planning, sourcing and building of Open RAN. But for this, our second panel, we are looking at how best to manage and operate Open RAN deployments. To continue our software or cloud native analogy, we're entering day two. So let me once again introduce our panelists. Joining us from Pennsylvania is Bill Stone, VP Network Planning at Verizon. We're joined from Dallas by Geetha Ram, who is Global Head of Telco Solution Incubations at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. From Boston, we welcome back Azhar Saeed, who is Global Chief Architect at Red Hat. Also joining us from Massachusetts is Anil Bhandari, VP Product Management at Altiostar. And from Dallas as well is Sandro Tavares, Head of Portfolio Marketing Mobile Networks at Nokia. Welcome back, everybody. In our earlier panel, we asked about the CapEx benefits of Open RAN, but now that we're into our deployment phase, what are the OPEX, the operational expenditure arguments for deploying Open RAN? Bill, perhaps I could ask this question to you first.
Yeah, my colleague spoke earlier about the scalability benefits with an Open RAN. One area in particular I'd like to emphasize where we see the potential for OPEX savings going forward is the area of orchestration and optimization. As we move toward a much more software-oriented RAN, we're anticipating that we'll be able to instantiate network functions, perform software upgrades, essentially manage the network less manually through automated, repetitive processes. I believe Geetha mentioned in the first section that we've already moved in that direction in the core network. Now we're extending that into the RAN, into the edges of the network, and that will generate OPEX benefit.
Thank you, Bill. Any of our vendor friends like to comment about Azhar?
So very quickly, I think I mentioned about people like seeing roughly between 15 and 20% gain on the CapEx side. They're seeing actually more gain on the OPEX side as they have started to operate these Open RAN environments. And primarily because what Bill was talking about earlier, which is automation. They are able to now automate the entire platform because software components are disaggregated. Hardware is, COTS type hardware, commercial off the shelf. And now, because of that disaggregated software components, they're now able to actually fully automate from provisioning to managing. So from day one to day two. And most recently, I've now started to have conversations with people around zero touch and no ops type of models. We're significantly saving operational costs in terms of deployment and management and running of the Open RAN environment.
Thanks. Sandro?
Yeah, I just like to highlight a pretty important point, right? Because I'm seeing a little bit of confusion. So what is Cloud RAN and what is FIN RAN, right? So you already actually, all these benefits that were talked about here, they are actually natural and they come from the Cloud RAN environment, so the vRAN environment. Open RAN comes on top of that, right? So I think it is important to actually make sure that we put things where they belong, right? And even like a cloud environment that is still not implementing the open interfaces, which is most of the cases right now, they already show these benefits, and the benefits are just going to get even bigger when you move to a fully open environment, just to make sure that we're not mixing up the definitions here.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification, Sandro. And Anil, you wanted to comment as well on this.
Yeah, just 2 points I wanted to make, Guy. One is that with Open RAN, one can support, and we are supporting model-driven APIs, and that helps in automation, which then brings various OPEX benefits, and also DevSecOps, which again helps in automated testing of the software, various releases, and its deployment in production environment.
And can we move on to how telcos actually all manage this? Because I guess most telcos will be rolling out Open RAN alongside existing traditional RAN. So is it best to create a separate operations team dedicated to the Open RAN? Should it be managed in parallel to existing network, or should it use the existing OSS that a telco has already invested in? Any thoughts about which is the best approach for a telco to take? Sandro?
Yeah, it has to be integrated, right? So the worst thing you can do is thinking about creating a parallel network with a separate management system and so on. Of course, that when you're beginning, there are going to be a few challenges with that. It is expected, but you need to take these challenges head on. So whenever you're bringing an open RAN environment to an operator network, all of the management of the network, deployment of features, basically everything that is related to the regular operations of the network has to be integrated in the big picture, right? Otherwise, you might be setting yourself up for failure.
Thanks. Bill, important to integrate from the get-go?
Absolutely. Totally agree with what Sandra was just saying, that I will acknowledge that there is a learning curve. There's certainly a ramp up, training of resources, learning how to troubleshoot. But our expectation, and we've certainly seen this in the core network, is that the operations team, one team, will make the transition, and there's no reason to treat this as a completely separate network. On the OSS side, presently, for the most part, we're leveraging the existing OSS systems that we had been using historically per vendor. I will say, as standardization work continues on interfaces, there's certainly consideration, and I would say it would be more desirable at some point in the system to move to a vendor agnostic OSS solution. So that is certainly something we're actively, and I know many of my colleagues are actively supporting in the standardization process.
Great. Now, Bill mentioned troubleshooting there. Do we yet know how challenging it is to troubleshoot Open RAN? Given the possible complexity of deployments, at least in terms of different components from different suppliers, are telcos facing a new set of challenges here?
Well, I'll just jump in and set the stage by saying it's a little too early to say. With anything new, there's the learning curve that I spoke about before. We're still in the early phase of moving to a full Open RAN with a fully compliant interface between the VDU and the radio. We've certainly been heavily engaged in lab testing. We've actually completed calls, connections on the production network. We're very close to actually scaling it up on the production network. Our expectation is that tools will be developed that will enable us to monitor the interface, and when there are faults or problems or alarms detected, once again, we're anticipating that we'll be able to, through programming and automation, determine what the cause was of the problem, but there will be that learning phase that we need to go through. So we're still early days on this. It's a little early to say, but I expect there will be some challenges, but we'll overcome them quickly with tools and learning.
Thank you, Bill. Azar?
Yeah, I'll separate the problem into two spaces. One is the management of the infrastructure and the platform. In a disaggregated architecture, you would actually end up deploying a common platform across the entire Open RAN environment. So from that point of view, the operational experience for a telco should be similar regardless of what location they're deploying that particular component on, right? Whether it's a CU deployment or DU deployment, a far edge or a near edge type of deployment. And then managing that, troubleshooting that, in building that and automating that in terms of a zero-touch models are all things that we have built with our partners in terms of reference architectures, both in from a hardware context as well as from a software context. Now, in terms of troubleshooting the exact radio components themselves, or the network functions that are deployed in terms of CU and DU, that's where I think plug tests that ORAN has conducted with TIP that recently happened allow us to conform to those standardized set of interfaces in terms of those network functions interoperating with each other, and then using things like what Sandra was talking about, RIC, RAN Intelligent Controller, to be able to manage and to be able to troubleshoot contexts and issues should become a lot easier. So to Bill's point, yes, tools are there, tools are coming. From an infrastructure point of view, everything's there. Having that particular common infrastructure is incredibly important, and not try to segment your infrastructure into different components where troubleshooting becomes incredibly difficult.
I'm pleased to mention the integration work that OTIC's doing, because we're going to be covering that on a panel we have scheduled for tomorrow. Sandra, you also wanted to comment on this question.
I think that it was already pretty well covered by Bill and Azar, right? So there are tools, and some companies are putting tools together to support the troubleshooting of these networks. And it also passes through how well the integration is done, right? So if you have a project that is well structured from the beginning, it gets easier as well once the network is implemented to troubleshoot anything that may happen there. So with the right tools in place and the proper integration being done before, these may not be a huge challenge, and not, or at least not a different challenge than what we have today, for example, on core networks and other environments that are more open than the RAN has traditionally been.
Thank you. Now, we anticipate substantial cloud-based elements to Open RAN and significant use of cloud-native practices. Given this, will telcos have to start deploying daily or multiple times per day software updates across the Open RAN network? And what challenges might this present for an industry that's not known for this kind of rapid activity? Bill?
Sure. Seems logical for me to jump in on that right away. What I will say is that, and it sort of ties back to the previous question. The first thing is that we need good data, good peg counts, good information about how the system is performing. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, we're trying to deliver and are delivering a high quality experience to our customers. So we need to be constantly informed about the health of the radio access network system. Where I'm going with that is that I find it difficult to imagine that we would actually be loading software multiple times a day, because we need, I guess the frequency for software upgrades is going to be highly dependent on how long it takes to actually baseline and measure performance with each individual software update. We're certainly in this type of cloud native environment going to be moving to much more in the way of rapid software deployment, but we do need to take the time to baseline and evaluate exactly how the software is performing.
So on the software deployment, while absolutely cloud native deployment models are completely different from the traditional deployment models that telco have seen or experienced, and so they do have to change. The question is how fast is this change, or how much is that particular change? The telcos were used to deploying software once in a year, once in probably a couple of years, to once in a year, to now once in 6 months. And now this is probably significantly reducing the deployment time. Part of it was not just that they didn't want to deploy new software or update new software, but it was also because the processes were hard, the systems were very hard to make it happen. Cloud native actually changes that and allows them to deploy sooner. I'll give you some examples of the providers who have actually gone cloud native and started to deploy software a little bit more rapidly. And also, when you talk about software deployment, there are different degrees or layers. You probably don't want to touch the core infrastructure components, as Bill was talking about earlier, but you may want to change the apps or the services that run on top of it more frequently. So in that context, let's say if you have an XApp that's running on RIC, you'd probably change the XApp much more rapidly than you would actually change the RIC version or the DU version more rapidly. But nevertheless, still, you may want to provide updates and patches to the DU software or the CU software through the automated process, through the CI pipeline that people have already created. Now we have examples of when telcos creating a distributed CI pipeline where multiple vendors are delivering software into that pipeline. They have an automated process of integrating it, testing it, rapidly deploying it into their production infrastructure. So it's being done. Yes, it requires a change. Yes, it also requires a change in their operational process to make that happen.
And Geetha, what's your view on this rapid acceleration in software updates? Is that going to cause a problem to telcos?
Well, I agree that we want to get there, and the tools will get us there for the rapid deployments and rapid upgrades and so on. But I question that is the buffet approach of rapidly update the software and the hardware or any components anytime as quickly as possible within days, weeks, etc., is the right approach. Because operators do have certain standards in terms of quality of service and SLAs that they support today, and that is not going to go away. And there has to be some level of pre-integration done at either hardware infrastructure, cloud layer, cloud OS layer, like Azar mentioned, pre-integration done with respect to performance, power, etc., before these upgrades are done. So irrespective of the tools that are available, which the tools will be available, so that's a no-brainer, are we going to do it is the question. And to me, it seems that going to step in from here to there immediately is probably not the right move.
Thank you, Geetha. Sandra and Anil, I'd like to sort of bring you into this if I can. Sandra first, have you got any thoughts about how telcos approach this, and the degree of pre-integration, for example?
Mm-hmm. Well, if you look basically into the process of moving towards a more staggered approach to deploying software and getting into a CI/CD kind of way of working, it passes quite a lot, as Geetha pointed out. I mean, there is a limit on what should be done, considering that we are talking about a really mission critical system, right? That we're talking about 5 nines, 6 nines, and so on. So it is not that we simply can go and deploy a new software without proper alignment with the operator, with the operations team of the service provider, especially. That said, we can say that with a change in culture, we can actually get software being deployed and get drops happening more often than what we usually have today. So today, whenever you have a new software load for an operator, it usually goes into one cluster first, and then you do all the tests. You basically have it running there for a while before you deploy it in the entire network. And of course, there are ways to optimize this process, right? Some operators are already embracing that, and we are working in a much more agile way with them. But I'm not going to say that this is the norm everywhere in the world. So there is, besides having a cloud native software and having the ability of doing that, there's a whole set of change in the culture of our industry that needs to happen as well.
Great, thanks. And Anil, have you found this as well? The differences in telcos as they look towards an increased rapidity of software updates?
So Guy, we are seeing many operators who are now moving in this direction of implementing CI/CD, and it is definitely bringing better or higher agility. And in terms of the process that is being followed is that with DevSecOps, operators are now able to get images in an automated fashion, and these are secure images. They are able to run the tests in an automated fashion. So again, that enhances and improves the time that it used to take for the software testing earlier. So they are doing that, and then obviously the production deployment, again, that is being done in automated fashion. So overall, we see operators picking up this particular manner of software deployment going forward.
Great. That's software. Let's move on to hardware. I've got a final question for you. Having an Open RAN architecture with its open interfaces between components suggests that telcos could more easily switch in and out vendors mid-operation even. But is this, first of all, is it practical? And also, is it even desirable to do this?
Well, you can say that it definitely breaks a barrier, right? Considering that, for example, especially if you're talking about baseband, centralized unit, distributed units, where basically you're just talking about a software load now, so it gets much easier. But for that to be a reality, we come back to the discussion about the open interfaces, right? So we really need to have all the open interfaces well developed, well consolidated, so we can really do that without requiring a whole new integration project, right? And that will still take a while, but I believe we're going to get there. When you look into the radio units, then it can become a little bit more complicated. I mean, you may have practical challenges if you're looking into changing also the hardware, right? But if you look into in a future with white box radios being part of the ecosystem, then it may get simpler as well. So I would say it is an end game. It is what the industry is looking for, but there's still some work that needs to be done to turn that into a full reality.
Great, Sandro. Thanks very much indeed. Well, in that case, we best wrap up this second and final part of our panel discussion. That is all the time we have, unfortunately. Thank you all very much for taking part in this discussion. Now, if you missed it, I would recommend that you watch the first part of this panel, which is available to view now on demand here on TelecomTV, where we discuss the planning and construction of Open RAN. Our live Q&A program is scheduled for 4:30 p.m. UK time today, where we'll be taking your questions. Please get in touch with us now. Use the form here on the website, and there's a link there to add the session to your calendar. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again for the live Q&A. Goodbye for now.